Go ahead and subscribe, please. This case takes place in France in 2025, a year that will forever be etched in the minds of many internet users around the world due to the shocking events that unfolded. On the 18th of August 2025, in a small, unassuming house located near the picturesque city of Nice on the French Riviera, a live camera captured a deeply disturbing and ultimately tragic scene. A 46-year-old man lay completely motionless on a thin, worn-out mattress placed directly on the floor, with thousands of live viewers watching in absolute horror as two younger men moved in and out of the frame, seemingly oblivious at first to the gravity of the situation. This is the heartbreaking and cautionary case of Raphael Graven, a man who was otherwise known by his online pseudonym Palmanov, or, as he was more affectionately and simply called by his dedicated followers, just JP. JP was no stranger to the spotlight or to seeking attention in the digital age. He was a former soldier who had served his country with dedication, and according to those who knew him personally during his military days and beyond, he was a natural entertainer with a charismatic personality that drew people in. After completing a long and respectable career in the Army, he made the bold decision to reinvent himself in his 40s as an online content creator, a move that would eventually lead him down a path filled with both fame and unimaginable peril. He began amassing a huge and loyal following through a variety of stunts and endurance streams that pushed the boundaries of what was considered entertaining. One day, JP would be seen playing video games for hours on end, engaging with his audience in a light-hearted manner, and the next, he would subject himself to bizarre and increasingly dangerous challenges, always upping the ante to keep his viewers hooked and coming back for more. By the year 2025, he had successfully built an impressive online empire, boasting over 1 million followers across all major social media platforms, a testament to his ability to captivate and entertain a global audience. In early 2023, a brand new platform entered the competitive world of live streaming, and its name was Kick. Kick was launched as an innovative live streaming service with the clear ambition of rivaling the giant that is Amazon's Twitch, a platform that had long dominated the space. It was backed by a group of savvy online casino entrepreneurs who understood the power of incentivizing creators, and they offered an unparalleled 95% cut of subscription revenue directly to its streamers, a financial model that was far more generous than what most competitors provided. Due to this significantly better pay structure, many established and up-and-coming streamers made the decision to transfer over to this new and promising platform without much hesitation. However, what proved to be even more enticing to a certain subset of creators was the growing reputation of Kick for having much looser moderation policies and far more permissive content rules compared to its stricter counterparts. Twitch, for instance, is well known in the streaming community for being somewhat rather strict with its guidelines and quick to issue bans for violations, whereas Kick was positioned as far more relaxed, allowing for a wider range of content that pushed ethical and safety boundaries. For JP, this emerging platform represented a golden opportunity, a chance to build his already thriving online persona even further and to explore creative freedoms that were restricted elsewhere. JP had initially began building his online persona as far back as around 2019 on popular sites like TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch, starting with relatively tame content. Early on in his content creation journey, he gained a modest but steadily growing following through engaging gaming streams where he showcased his skills and personality, as well as some comedic skits that highlighted his natural humor and timing. However, as time progressed and he sought ways to stand out in an oversaturated market, he soon turned to more extreme challenges that bordered on the masochistic, eating ridiculously spicy foods that left him in visible agony, streaming for 24 hours straight without any breaks, and even pranking himself in ways that caused genuine discomfort. Basically, it all boiled down to him just suffering for the entertainment of his viewers, a formula that, while controversial, proved to be highly effective in boosting engagement and subscriber numbers. When the platform Kick finally arrived on the scene with its more lenient content rules and hands-off approach to moderation, it was the perfect arena for JP to push things further than he ever had before, experimenting with ideas that would have been immediately shut down on other sites. Although he started this new chapter with enthusiasm, he wasn't entirely alone in this venture. By 2024, he had teamed up with two fellow French streamers who would soon become central and infamous characters in this unfolding case. JP's closest collaborators were known online by their handles Naruto and Sephine, names that evoked a sense of camaraderie and shared adventure among their fanbase. To their dedicated fans, the trio were sort of like an oddball internet family, a quirky group dynamic with JP positioned as the older brother figure who guided and endured for the group. In fact, they even referred to themselves as brothers in various posts and streams, fostering a sense of loyalty and closeness. Naruto once wrote a heartfelt message to JP that read, "My brother, my sidekick, my partner, 6 years side by side. I love you," a statement that would later take on a bitterly ironic tone given the events that transpired. As the three spent more and more time collaborating on the platform, creating content together and feeding off each other's energy, they discovered something alarming yet profitable. They discovered that if they inflicted pain and humiliation specifically on JP, their viewership numbers would skyrocket dramatically. What started as occasional slaps and light-hearted insults on stream quickly escalated into something far more sinister and systematic. Gradually, Naruto and Sephine transitioned from being equal partners to becoming outright tormentors, while JP was reduced to the role of the punching bag, the one who bore the brunt of the physical and emotional abuse for the sake of content. By late 2024, virtually each and every stream featured intense physical and psychological humiliations inflicted in real time, all performed in front of a live, interactive audience that could influence the direction through donations and chat messages. The trio even devised twisted, game show-like segments that added a layer of structure to the chaos. JP would be asked impossibly hard trivia questions or made to perform complex tasks under extreme duress and time pressure. Wrong answers or any failures to complete the challenges were met with immediate and harsh punishments. A hard slap across the face that echoed through the microphone, a bucket of ice-cold water dumped over his head without warning, or something even worse and more degrading that left lasting marks. Night after night, without fail, viewers tuned in eagerly to watch JP endure these degrading challenges that tested the limits of human tolerance. What they saw unfolding on their screens was nothing short of shocking and increasingly disturbing. JP being repeatedly slapped, kicked with force, and verbally abused by the two other streamers, to the point that JP became visibly groggy, his reactions slowing down as the sessions wore on. What they saw unfolding on their screens was nothing short of shocking and increasingly disturbing. JP being repeatedly slapped, kicked with force, and verbally abused by the two other streamers, to the point that JP became visibly groggy, his reactions slowing down as the sessions wore on. In another infamous segment, they tightened their hands around his throat in what they claimed was a mock strangulation, only releasing their grip when JP's face turned bright red, and he began gasping desperately for air, his eyes bulging in panic. Then, on yet another occasion that drew massive viewership, what started as a playful wrestling match on stream quickly devolved into a full-fledged beating, with JP once again being the sole victim, pinned down and struck repeatedly. With each escalation, the live chat box on the screen would explode with a large amount of engagement emojis, donations, and messages pouring in. Basically, the further they took it, pushing JP to new lows. The more reward they received in terms of views, subscriptions, and monetary gifts. Some viewers genuinely believed that this was just all an elaborate act, an extreme form of comedy or stunt performance where JP was fully in on the joke and consenting to every moment, a little bit like the infamous Jackass series that popularized self-inflicted pain for laughs. However, a growing number of others watched precisely because they suspected deep down that this was entirely real, the raw authenticity adding a forbidden thrill to the spectacle. French media outlets have since reported in detail that after reviewing hours upon hours of archive footage, it is still not entirely clear whether JP had subjected himself to the violence voluntarily from the start or if he was gradually forced to endure it against his worsening judgment. Nor could experts definitively tell if the actions were meticulously real or carefully staged for dramatic effect. Either way, the ambiguity only served to attract more and more curious onlookers, turning the streams into a viral phenomenon that spread across social media. In late 2024, not content with the current level of extremity, they upped the antics yet again to unprecedented heights. JP was now subjected to prolonged sleep deprivation that left him delirious, regular beatings that occurred multiple times per stream, and even forced to ingest unknown and potentially dangerous liquids on camera while the check cheered. He was often covered head to toe in fresh bruises, sported black eyes that swelled shut, and appeared to be completely disorientated, struggling to maintain balance or coherent speech. All of this was happening in the open, broadcast 24/7 for anyone with an internet connection to witness. As the horror unfolded live in real time, some observers outside of the Kick platform ecosystem grew increasingly alarmed and began raising red flags. In late 2024, French journalists investigating the darker corners of online content creation, along with local authorities, finally took official notice of JP's disturbing broadcasts that had been gaining traction. On the 15th of December 2024, there was a major expose published by reputable French media outlets. They highlighted one of the trio's recurring shows that the group would broadcast regularly, a program which roughly translates to English as Battle of the Cripples. This in-depth expose detailed in chilling terms how certain influencers in France were producing live videos filled with extreme violence and public humiliation, deliberately targeting vulnerable individuals and exploiting them for huge audiences and massive financial profit, all under the guise of entertainment. In early January of 2025, following the public outcry generated by the article, the police reportedly took decisive action and brought in the three streamers for formal questioning at the station. Under intense interrogation, they all insisted vehemently that their content, while undeniably extreme and not for the faint of heart, was entirely voluntary on JP's part and carefully staged according to pre-agreed scripts. The investigation, however, remained open and active, with no immediate charges filed. Officials began closely monitoring the situation going forward, systematically gathering evidence from the vast library of videos, and meticulously trying to determine if any French laws ranging from assault to endangerment were actually broken during the course of these streams. In late January of 2025, despite the ongoing scrutiny, JP made the decision to return to streaming, and the vicious cycle of on-camera abuse resumed almost immediately, seemingly escalating further with each passing day, building toward what would soon become a tragic and irreversible end. In August of 2025, with summer in full swing, JP and his two partners announced an ambitious and highly publicized new project, a marathon live stream that would test the absolute limits of endurance. Marathon live streams had already become a growing trend in the influencer world by this point. Creators around the globe were staying live for 24, 48, even 72 hours straight as a personal challenge to themselves and as a strategic way to raise money for charity causes or simply to grow their subscriber bases exponentially. But for these three, it was fundamentally different in scope and intent. This just wouldn't be a simple matter of sitting in front of a camera playing video games for a long period of time while chatting with fans. Their marathon stream was explicitly designed to be full of extreme violence, prolonged endurance tests, and relentless humiliation centered almost entirely on JP. To facilitate this grueling event, they rented a modest house specifically for the live stream, complete with multiple cameras set up in every room to ensure no moment went unrecorded. And on the 7th of August, 2025, after much hype and promotion across their social channels, the stream officially went live. And once it began, it didn't stop for a single second, running continuously without breaks. Viewers from all time zones could tune in at any hour, any day, any night just to witness the horrendous and deteriorating state that JP was progressively falling into as the days dragged on. In the initial days of the marathon, Naruto and Sephine played the roles of energetic live hosts, bantering playfully with the ever-present chat, reading out donations, and occasionally allowing JP brief moments of rest to catch his breath. But these were only fleeting and strategically timed for maximum dramatic effect. The abuse, however, started nearly instantly from the very first hour, and it escalated rapidly with each passing challenge. Each day of the stream was structured around a series of challenges that essentially amounted to systematic and prolonged torture disguised as content. JP was deliberately deprived of sleep for extended periods, kept awake through blaring loud music that prevented any respite or sudden physical shakeups by his partners if he ever dared to nod off even for a second. He was often beaten on camera without provocation, sometimes framed as punishment for failing an arbitrary task, other times just for no reason at all, simply to elicit reactions from the audience. JP was also repeatedly forced to consume scalding hot sauces that burned his mouth and throat, raw eggs that made him vomit on stream, and other toxic concoctions mixed specifically to make him feel violently ill and disoriented. There were multiple moments where JP was choked until he nearly passed out, and then roughly dragged back in front of the main camera, his eyes half open in a glassy daze, barely registering what was happening. Paintball guns were fired directly on his unprotected skin at point-blank range, closer than ever before in previous streams, leaving deep and painful welts. The bruises accumulated and were clearly visible on JP's arms, torso, and face, turning his skin into a canvas of abuse. According to some horrified viewers who documented the progression, his body had taken on a sickly pale yellow color overall, with large purple bruised circles dotted all over like a map of the torment he had endured. And then there was the relentless psychological torture that accompanied the physical assaults. Naruto and Sephine berated JP constantly throughout the broadcast, calling him a string of demeaning and dehumanizing names, laughing mockingly at his visible suffering, and repeatedly reminding him on microphone that the audience demanded and wanted all of this to happen, that stopping would mean disappointing the fans who paid good money. Some fans did express genuine worrying in the chat as the days wore on, writing concerned messages like, "He doesn't look good at all. JP, please rest for your own sake." But others, emboldened by the donation system, countered with, "We paid for this show. Keep going no matter what." By day 10 of the marathon, JP was a complete wreck, a shadow of the energetic entertainer he once was. Those watching the stream faithfully could see clearly that something was fundamentally different now. A breaking point had been reached. JP's face was swollen beyond recognition and unnaturally pale. He moved sluggishly like a zombie, barely able to stand upright without swaying dangerously. At times he appeared to be drifting in and out of consciousness even whilst on his feet, yet still the live stream continued mercilessly without intervention. At one particularly cruel point late in the marathon, Naruto and Sephine attempted to stage a mock game where JP had to crawl pathetically towards a marked goal on the floor while they periodically kicked him hard in the ribs to motivate him. But as they continued kicking him while he was down, it became painfully clear to everyone watching that JP had no strength left whatsoever to even react or defend himself. And then, abruptly, the final moments arrived live on camera for the world to see. It was Sunday, the 17th of August, 2025, rolling inexorably into the early hours of Monday the 18th, the clock ticking past midnight. JP was shown lying down motionless on the same thin mattress on the floor that had served as his only bed throughout the entire streaming marathon, a symbol of the minimal care provided. He was wrapped up in a thin blanket for modesty, and for a long, unsettling stretch of time, he hadn't moved at all, not a twitch, not a breath visible to the camera. The chat began to fill rapidly with increasingly desperate messages like, "JP, are you still alive? Someone please check on him right now." This isn't funny anymore. Viewers were growing deeply uneasy, the tone shifting from entertainment to outright panic. Naruto then walked casually over to the mattress where JP was laying. He picked up a plastic water bottle from a nearby table and chucked it with force directly at JP's exposed ribs. Normally, even an utterly exhausted JP would at least flinch instinctively or let out a groan of pain, but this time he didn't even move a muscle. The silence that followed on the stream was absolutely horrifying. There was no reply, no movement, no sound of breathing, nothing at all. In a sudden and visible panic that broke the facade, the stream abruptly cut out without warning. The video feed went completely dark, ending the grueling 10-day stream in an instant. On viewers' screens around the world, the channel simply just went offline, leaving a black void. Those who had been watching faithfully for days were left in utter shock and confusion, hearts pounding. Many began to wonder aloud in forums and social media, had they just really witnessed a man's final moments unfolding in real time? Some clung to hope that this was just an elaborate prank or an intentional cliffhanger designed to generate buzz, but others immediately knew in their gut and feared the absolute worst. People began flooding to social media platforms with urgent alerts and screenshots. Concerned fans and bewildered onlookers who had stumbled upon the stream alerted authorities in France, unsure if what they had seen was genuine or some kind of hoax, but unwilling to take the risk. Tragically, every fear was confirmed. It was all too real. Sometime shortly after the broadcast ended so abruptly, paramedics were urgently called to the streaming house by someone inside or a viewer who managed to contact emergency services. When the medical team arrived on scene, they found JP completely unresponsive on the mattress, and, despite their best efforts with CPR and defibrillation, they could not revive him. On the 18th of August, it was publicly confirmed through official channels that a 46-year-old man had been found dead at a live stream location in the Nice area. It didn't take long for the full truth to emerge and spread. JP had literally died on live camera, his final moments broadcast, 2000s. News of JP's death spread like wildfire across the internet within hours, trending on every major platform. In France, the story dominated television news, newspapers, and radio for days. For many ordinary citizens who didn't know about this strange and extreme internet subculture, they were deeply horrified and struggled to comprehend how such a thing could occur in the modern age. They saw this as a nightmare scenario where online entertainment had gotten utterly out of control, spiraling into real-world tragedy. Those who had seen the final stream live were profoundly traumatized, many seeking counseling afterward. A large number of viewers, including impressionable teenagers who had tuned in out of curiosity, had essentially watched a man be tortured to death in real time over the course of 10 days. Fans who had followed JP's journey loyally for years, from his early gaming days to the extreme content, were in tears and disbelief, grieving the loss of someone they felt they knew personally. Many posted emotional tributes on social media and apologized publicly for ever encouraging or donating to this extreme violence, realizing too late the role they played. There was an overwhelming outpouring of grief and guilt across communities, but it was far too late to change anything. Internet forums then lit up with heated discussions that went on for weeks. How could this possibly happen in a civilized society? Why didn't anyone, platform moderators, authorities, or even close friends, step in to stop it before it was too late? Some of JP's most loyal followers confessed openly that they had initially found the content extremely funny and edgy, a guilty pleasure, but over time, as JP's condition visibly worsened, they grew deeply concerned for his safety and well-being, yet felt powerless and didn't know how to help or whom to contact. Naruto also publicly mourned JP in the immediate aftermath, a move that many people found to be rather tone-deaf and insincere given the circumstances. He wrote a lengthy post on Instagram, saying, "I asked you all to respect his memory and to not share the video of his last moments. I love you, my brother. We will miss you terribly." Sephine similarly shared posts expressing his sadness over JP's death. However, the online backlash was swift and fierce. Many accused Naruto and Sephine of shedding crocodile tears, holding them directly and solely responsible for JP's untimely death. Countless responses flooded in, saying things like, "You're the ones who did this to him. You killed your so-called brother for views, likes, and money." Some people, perhaps in denial or defense of the streamers, tried to claim that JP had died peacefully in his sleep due to an underlying medical condition that no one knew about, and that all the violence had been carefully scripted and rehearsed. When investigators began formally interviewing Naruto and Sephine in the wake of the death, this became their immediate and primary defense strategy. Their lawyers released statements asserting that JP had a pre-existing cardiovascular problem that tragically gave out, and that all the scenes were staged method acting, and they were just following a detailed script agreed upon by all parties. But these claims were met with widespread skepticism from the public, experts, and media alike. French media had, after all, meticulously reviewed hours of the raw footage in which JP's reactions didn't look acted or exaggerated at all. It looked entirely real, pained, and authentic. An autopsy has been ordered by prosecutors to determine the precise cause of death with scientific certainty. If the autopsy reveals any signs of acute trauma such as broken ribs from kicks, internal bleeding from beatings, or toxic substances in his system from the forced ingestions, it would strongly undercut and likely dismantle the natural causes narrative that the two are desperately trying to spin in their defense. As of the latest updates available, French authorities have confirmed that they are opening a formal judicial investigation into JP's death, treating it as highly suspicious from the outset and actively seeking to assign criminal responsibility where it belongs. Police have since thoroughly combed through the rented house that the streamers were using as their base, seizing all streaming equipment, computer hard drives, memory cards, and any physical evidence of what transpired during those fateful 10 days. Naruto and Sephine have been identified as key witnesses in the case and, more damningly, as potential suspects who may face charges. At the very least, they were the last people to see JP alive and failed to seek help in time. It's widely reported that manslaughter or negligent homicide charges are very much on the table as starting points. And then, depending on the autopsy results, toxicology reports, and the mountain of other evidence collected, charges could even escalate to far more serious counts like torture, aggravated assault, and premeditated murder. For the platform Kick, the fallout from this incident is potentially devastating on multiple fronts: reputational, financial, and legal. The platform is still very new in the grand scheme of tech companies, and they are desperately trying to build a trustworthy reputation amid fierce competition. Many commentators and users have also drawn direct parallels to a specific episode of the dystopian series Black Mirror, in which a man performs increasingly dangerous stunts on live stream in exchange for money and fame, a plot that now feels eerily prophetic. Kick's leadership has given an official response in an attempt to control the narrative. A spokesperson offered formal condolences, saying, "We are deeply saddened by the loss of JP, and we extend our sincerest condolences to his family, friends, and community." Kick has asserted that it is now urgently reviewing the circumstances surrounding the death in detail and engaging with relevant stakeholders, law enforcement, victim advocates, and possibly even international regulators to investigate what exactly happened and why their systems failed to prevent it. Kick also claimed publicly that their community guidelines are explicitly designed to protect creators and viewers alike, and that they remained committed to upholding these standards across the entire platform. They have emphasized repeatedly that this kind of tragedy wasn't supposed to happen on their watch, and that they are taking it extremely seriously. Behind the scenes, away from the public statements, Kick took swift and decisive action on the specific accounts involved to distance themselves. All streamers who participated in the live broadcast were immediately and indefinitely banned pending the outcome of the investigation. JP's own channel was also completely removed from the site without hesitation, effectively scrubbing the vast majority of the evidence of the streams from public view on the platform. Although pirated recordings and clips continue to circulate on alternative sites and dark corners of the internet, however, the concept of true consent becomes extremely difficult and murky when significant money, unbalanced power dynamics, and potential coercion are involved in the equation. JP was older in years, but it seems increasingly clear from testimonies that he was in a less powerful position within the group dynamic. He appeared to be financially dependent on the streaming income as his primary source of livelihood, and he also seemed to be emotionally dependent on his so-called friends who had become his entire social and professional world. The investigators are determined to explore in depth whether or not he was manipulated, pressured, or outright coerced into enduring far more than he ever wanted to or was capable of handling safely. Text messages recovered from phones, behind-the-scenes videos that were never meant to be public, and witness testimony from those who knew the trio personally could shed crucial light on how much of this JP truly agreed to willingly versus how much was imposed upon him. However, one particularly damning piece of evidence has since come to light that severely undermines the consent argument. Before his death, during a rare moment of privacy, JP sent a desperate text message to his mother that read, "Hey Mom, how are you? I'm sick of this game. It's gone way too far. I feel like I'm being held hostage by their awful concept. I'm exhausted beyond words. I want to leave, but the other guys won't let me. He's holding me hostage." This message paints a picture of a man trapped and pleading for escape, not a willing participant. The case of JP is frightening and tragic on so many profound levels, serving as a stark wake-up call for the entire online content creation industry. This truly is a Black Mirror episode come to life in the most horrifying way possible, and sadly it probably won't be the last of such cases as platforms compete for attention and creators chase virality at any cost. It started innocently enough as the story of a man trying to reinvent himself after a structured life in the military, finding new purpose, friends, and fans through the vast reach of the internet. But it soon changed into a modern horror story that ended in preventable death, leaving behind shattered lives, traumatized viewers, and critical questions about responsibility, regulation, and the dark side of digital fame.